Hi guys, it's Shell, Heart of It All Custom Creations. Welcome back to another video. If you're new to my channel, thank you so much for stopping by. Hit that subscribe button to see future videos. I post new videos every Wednesday and Saturday. So today I have a really fun tumbler that's milk for Santa, along with a cookie coaster. So let's go ahead and jump right into the video. So I'm starting out with this water bottle tumbler. I got like a 4-pack off of Amazon, and really wasn't sure what I wanted to do with it, but then I saw the top of this, which you'll see later. So that's what I'm going to do. I lightly sanded this. It's already powder coated white. So I'm just going to tape off the edge because I don't want to put the epoxy all the way to the top. And I'm going to tape this using electrical tape just to protect that top rim. And then I'm going to take painter's tape. And it's like 1.5 inches wide, I think. And I'm going to go all the way down the middle. This is going to create kind of like a Santa suit. So that white strip is going to be like his fur at the front. So portions of this video ended up getting damaged and I couldn't use it. So I'll try to explain as much as possible once I get to them. So that you'll know when portions of them is missing. But anyway, I'm taking this tape and going all the way down to the front of the tumbler and then cut off the excess because I'm not going to carry it down to the bottom. And make sure that as much as possible that this tape is laying down so that I don't have any leaking of paint underneath, because the rest of it I am going to paint red. It was way too rainy to paint this day. To take it outside to spray paint. So I'm just using some crimson chalk paint, what I have left. And I'm going to just paint it. And this dried fairly quickly, so it didn't take long at all. And I'm just giving it a quick paint job. It did need to be perfect because we're going to go in and do a light coat of epoxy over this and use some glitter. And I just needed it mostly red so that anything, when the glitter stuck to it, you wouldn't see that stark white underneath it. So that's what I'm doing here. And I mean, I was running low on this red paint, but so that's what I did. I set this aside to dry. It literally took maybe 10 minutes for this to dry before I could move into the next step. And I did not remove the tape. So as you can see here, it's all dry. And I took just very little epoxy and I'm going to apply that. I have very, very, very thin coat of epoxy, just enough for that glitter to adhere to that epoxy so that we can do Santa's coat. So applying that, making sure that I get everywhere that needs to have the epoxy. Anywhere that doesn't is already taped off, so that's safe. And then once that is all epoxied up, then I am going to grab my glitter. And I believe once we get there, I know I used it from the glitter guy, and I want to say that it was Ruby Slippers. And I think I do show it here. But here I'm just patting down to make sure that I got everything nice and covered. Yes, Ruby Slippers from the glitter guy. Everything that I do use will be in the description box below. At the time, I had considered painting the cap to kind of match, but I decided against that. So this is the easiest way that I felt to go ahead and do, just to do the bottle. The cap would have, you'll see later, the cap would have been a pain in the butt to do. So anyway, tap off the excess, and then I'm going to go ahead and remove the tape to reveal the nice little white stripe. And a little bit of paint did seep through, no big deal. I just kind of scraped that off. With it being chalk paint, it comes off super easy. And then I do seal this glitter twice with Rust-Oleum Clear spray so that that glitter doesn't shift around. And then while that's setting off to dry, I decided to make a cookie coaster. So what I'm doing here is I have these little clay sprinkles, and I'm just adding it into the little extra epoxy that was left, because I did mix up, I believe, 10 milliliters, and I wanted it a very, very thin layer at the very top, just so that these sprinkles kind of laid at the very top, so it looks like it's pressed into the cookie. So the first thing I'm doing is just mixing these sprinkles into that, and I'm going to put it into the bottom of this mold. And I did spray a little bit of alcohol into the bottom of the mold so that immediately any micro bubbles that are in there will release. And then I'm going to spread this around, making sure that it covers the whole bottom of that mold, and I will spray it again with the alcohol. And just kind of making sure that the sprinkles aren't all clumped together and are spread across evenly, so that when this is completely finished, it will look more like a sprinkled cookie. My goal was to have it look like a sugar cookie. So hopefully, and it's not really any shape other than just round, but a sprinkled sugar cookie. So that's what I'm doing here. So once that is completely cured, you'll notice there's a little bit of mica powder in there because I was trying to match it, and of course it spilled right into the wet epoxy. So hopefully that won't show up too bad, but I'm using this like golden pearl mica powder into about 20 milliliters of epoxy. And it might have been 15. Actually, I think it was 15 milliliters of epoxy. And I'm mixing that in, and I'm hoping that this will, once it, cures, that it'll be more of a cookie color. Of course, I'm not going to be able to match exactly to what a color of a sugar cookie is going to look like, but this is close as possible. So once I get that all mixed in, I am going to, once again, spray the top of the epoxy that's already cured in the mold, and then pour the epoxy on just to help release any of those bubbles, and then spray it again to release all those bubbles that will release them to come to the top to pop. And then I'm going to set this off to cure overnight. And I'm just moving it around to make sure that it gets even as possible, and then spray it again, and then we'll move on back to the tumbler. Okay, so here you can see I've already put on the belt and the buckle. I lost the footage for that, and it's just vinyl around, and I created a buckle using squares and lines and rectangles in my silhouette. And then on the other side of the Santa suit, I am going to put the wording "Milk for Santa." And so this, I did the offset in silver and then the words in black. And here I thought I had it perfectly aligned, but of course I didn't, and I cut off part of his words, so I had to recut Santa. So I'm gonna have to piece that all together, no big deal. And so that's what we're gonna have to deal with. So I'm just here weeding out all of the little inner bits that I don't need, and then I will apply the transfer tape to the offset and apply this to the tumbler exactly where I want it. Now I want this to be on the exact opposite of where Santa's fur is, and so that the back of him isn't just plain. And I didn't want to cover up his little fur, because on the next step, and I ripped it, of course, not paying attention in a hurry, which was no big deal. This is the offset, so I was able to piece it back together. And once the words are actually back on top, you can't even tell. But I am going to do something with his fur. It's not a huge difference, but I didn't want to do glitter for his chest or fur or whatever you want to call it. So here I'm just going ahead and lining up the words off onto the offset and placing that down. I'm just going word by word. since I did have to kind of piece it together. And then we will move on to the next step, which I'm kind of excited for. I wish I had done it maybe just a little bit differently, but it was my first time working with puffy paint. So, but I am pleased how it turned out. So flipping it back to the other side, and everywhere that's white, I'm going to use puffy paint. And I didn't want it to be so thick to where there would be really super puffy. And like I said, I've never really worked with puffy paint before, so I really wasn't sure what to expect. I can't speak today. So I did just add, ended up adding way too much. But I'm going to do this, and then I started with just kind of freehanding it, and then I decided this is probably not the smartest thing, so I did go back and add tape just to protect the rest of the tumbler. So I do get a little smart here because I think in my head, when I think puffy paint, I just thought it was going to puff up and go everywhere. So I wanted to protect anything that I could. That obviously did not end up happening, but I still needed a guide a little bit to keep the paint in the white area only. So that is what I'm doing, is just protecting the rest of the tumbler. And then what I will do once I get this all taped off is use like a makeup sponge to kind of move that puffy paint around and give it some texture. I didn't want it just complete flat, or else I would have just left the white paint. But I wanted to have it some texture, so it kind of mimicked fur. In that you knew that this wasn't just, I don't know what I was hoping to achieve here. I just kind of wanted to mimic fur and know that there was some texture there. I did end up switching to a paintbrush to kind of help add a little bit more texture to it. And I just keep working at it until I'm extremely happy with what I'm seeing. And then I did kind of remove any excess that was there too much. And then I went back and added some more. And I just kept messing with it until I was extremely happy with what was left. I think hindsight, I may have just kind of dabbed it on there instead of putting it on there altogether. So once it was dry, I did add another coat of epoxy, or sealed it with Quick Coat, CC DIY Quick Coat, before adding the epoxy so that none of my vinyl would lift. And then now I'm going ahead and adding the first of 2 final coats of epoxy. Like I said, this puffy paint did add a little bit of texture to it, but you can't really feel the bumpiness of it, which is awesome. So here I'm adding the epoxy, and again, I taped up at the rim. And then once I get the epoxy on, I will pop any bubbles, and then I'll remove that excess tape up at the top. So while that is spinning, it was time to turn my attention to do the last pour of my coaster, and just the remaining amount of epoxy that was left. I just poured in a little bit more of that mica powder and sprayed the alcohol, and then just spread this around. I wanted to get it as even as possible, and this actually was starting to thicken up by the time I got to it, so it's not that pretty, but at the end you'll see that it's really not going to matter what the underside looks like because it ends up getting covered. But I do add a little bit of heat to kind of even it out. So it actually ends up looking okay. But I'm going to let this sit and cure. And then once everything is done, this is how it turns out. I absolutely love it. I think it's cute. I do like the texture that it gives. And here is the lid. As you could see, that would have been a pain to kind of paint and do. But I really love how this turned out. And I wish I would have put the lid on first and then figured out where to put the chest, but I didn't. So it's a little off kilter, but that's okay. And then I just think this is just the cutest thing. And then here's the coaster. So I'm going to go ahead and finish it off and remove it from the mold. Because there's a little bit of excess going over. There's some trimming that I'll need to do. But look how cute this cookie is. And as you can see, right where the mica powder did spill in the first place, you can see it, but that's okay. I don't mind. I am going to use this for my grandson for the night Santa Claus comes. So I think he'll be pleased, and he ain't going to care that there's a little bit of a boo-boo in the middle of this coaster. So here I'm just taking my X-Acto knife and going around and trimming that excess epoxy that spilled over around the edge, just to give it a nice smooth edge. And then what I end up doing is I really wanted to put a non-skid on the bottom of this. And I knew I had like those big cork sheets you can get from Dollar Tree. Couldn't find it at the time of this, but I ended up finding it by the end of this. So, but I think this is so cute. I think it really does kind of give you that image of a sugar cookie. So I'm absolutely loving how the set looks. And here's the set together. And of course, what a horrible angle to show you it's sitting on the coaster. But as you can see right here, that kind of slides all around. And that's why I was really wanting to find that cork sheet to cut it out. And all I did was then place that cork or the coaster on top of the cork sheet, trace it around it, and then remove the backing and stick it. And here it is. And now I just cut out a little square. And now it's not going to move around on your end table or whatever. And it's nice and firm. So I absolutely love how this little set turned out. And I think it's going to be perfect for when Santa comes and needs his milk. So I really hope that you enjoyed this video. And that it gives you maybe some inspiration to create your own milk and cookie for Santa yourself. And yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a great big thumbs up. And I will see you guys next time. Bye, guys.